Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm going to be doing a series of videos that's going to cover visualbasic.net, and they're going to be geared towards beginners, so people who are experienced in programming may not find these early videos useful, because I'm going to try and my best to teach people who don't know a lot about Visual Basic or programming in general. So let's dive into our first lesson, guys. Alright, so in today's lesson I'm going to cover the basics of Visual Basic. I'm going to be talking about some syntax, declaring variables, input and output. Alright, so this little tiny diagram I drew here for you is to simply demonstrate that you're going to be working with code, and this code is going to be connected to a WinForm application. In visualbasic.net, you pretty much build Windows applications, things that kind of look like this or this over here. And they can be simple or very complex. Some people are very talented with it. Some people are kind of just make programs that work and look crude, but they work and you can do it pretty quickly. By the end of the series, you shall be able to make your very own Notepad program that'll work just kind of work like Notepad program in Windows. So yeah, most sources, most videos, they kind of teach the code and actually making the Windows form at the same time. But what I'm going to focus on is just the coding part, so you can learn the syntax and be able to connect it easily with the Windows form making part. Because I feel like teaching both at the same time is kind of difficult, because it doesn't really help people who don't know a lot about programming, and it can be very confusing and frustrating. So we'll take it one step at a time, and so that way anybody can get up to the level of being able to make a Windows form application using visualbasic.net quickly and easily and comfortably. Alright, so let's move on to getting our editor open and creating our first program. Alright, so yeah, so sorry, you might notice that there's a difference in time. It's because I had to go away and do some stuff. But anyway, we're back to this. Alright, so open new project. You want to go to Console application, save it wherever you will, name it whatever you want. Visual Studio is really nice. It starts you off like a little template to work on. So as we can see, we have our module, and we have our sub, and we have our main, or submain. If you're wondering what module is, think of it like a main within a main. I know it's not the best explanation in the world, but it'll become apparent what I mean by that later on. So anyway, let's make our very first program in Visual Basic. So we're going to start off with the simplest program of all when you're learning a new language, Hello World. So how you would do Hello World in VB is really simple. So Console.WriteLine and alright, look at that, Hello World. Well, let's print it out. Let's run it so you can see. There we go, look at that. Hello World, little happy face. And this is pretty much the main output statement in Visual Basic that you will be using. Alright, so let's talk about variables. 4 variables that we're going to cover are dim, sum, we're going to cover integer, we're going to cover double, we're going to cover char, and we're going to cover strings. Alright, so I'll do this here like this. Alright, if you notice there's a little squiggly line at the bottom, that's just because these variables they're not set to anything. So let me run through and explain to you what you're seeing. Alright, so dim just means, it means basically dimension, or it also means declare in memory. Yeah, that's it, something like that. I guess it's not necessarily important what dim means. Just know that you need to put it there to set a variable. So we write our variable name, and then we say has, and we set it to what our variable type is going to be. As you can notice, we have integers, doubles, char, and string. What these are is an integer is a single number, like 1, 2, 3, and then doubles are decimals, so like 1, 1.1, 1.2, something like that. Char simply means like a single character, and a string is a lot of characters put together. Alright, and I'll show you how to set these equal. So let's set integer to 1. Let's set our double to 1.5. Let's set our char to, I don't know, C for char. And then let's say our string, we'll say, oops, we'll say something like VB is fun. There we go. VB is fun. Oh, and easy. Alright, there we go. So you might be wondering, okay, cool, we set these variables to the things we wanted. How do we display them? Very simple in Visual Basic. Let's say my oops. Alright, so what you're looking at here is your console. It's going to display my integer when you run the program, and here's our little flag, and you notice 0, and I'll explain to you why the 0 in a few seconds. So all this is going to do is it's going to take some integer, which we know we already set to 1, so it's going to display my integer 1. As you can see, my integer 1, and we still have hello world. As you can see here, my some integer is set to 1, and it displays out right there. Alright, so this is how you would do it if you wanted to do multiple variables on the same line. So we would say something like, alright, we'll say it's equal to, yeah, that's it, yeah, 1. And then we write, alright, so notice the difference between the flags. We have a 0 and we have a 1. Why is that? Because when VB looks at these write lines, it counts the variables at a base of 0. So for example, a 0, notice 0 is right here, so this is the 0th variable, and then we have 1 right here, so this is the 1th variable, and it would go on and on. Also, something interesting, if you worked with C at all, you should notice that these flags aren't different at all, so you don't need to worry about like %sign D, %sign C, %sign, I don't know, F or double. It's all the same thing in VB. So, for example, let's run this. As you can see, my double 1.5 because we set some decimal to 1.5. And now we print it out. It printed out exactly as we expected. Okay, so just something interesting I want to show you in VB real quick. You can change the order of these. They don't necessarily have to print out in the order in which these are arranged, which is pretty cool. So for example, notice that now my integer, because I changed the flag to 1 and 0, prints out 1.5. My double prints out 1. See, here's their 0th variable, it's calling the 0th, and here's our first, it's calling the first. I just thought that was kind of neat. Maybe you can use that too in a program someday when you're working with it. But anyway, so just to show another example, you don't need to worry about flags for different variables. VB uses the same, so we'll call our character now. So sum char, and you put it the second. Okay, so let's run it. As you can see, my char C. Isn't that pretty cool? All right. So if you're wondering, okay, is there anything different I have to do for a string? Absolutely not. It's the exact same idea, which is pretty cool. Alright, so let's see. Here you go. VB is fun and easy. Very simple to print out. Alright, so you may be wondering, that's how you can set variables like this, but how do I put information from the console into a variable and then have it display out? Well, if you want to know how to do that, it's also very, very simple. So let's start with an integer. So let's start with an integer, and right. Alright, so if you're wondering, okay, so how do I, you might think to yourself, okay, well, if setting it all I'm doing is setting it to, if all I do So you might think to yourself, okay, well, all I would need to do is not set num equal to something, and then maybe VB would notice, okay, I gotta accept an input. Well, let's test this idea. And the answer is no. Most programs, if you don't set your variable to something, it will crash, but VB makes an exception, and that's why you see 0 there. Alright, so let's show you how to input actually data. So we would set our num, which we've created up here. It's just a new variable. So we'll set num equals there you go. And as you can see right now, what you use to accept input from the console is this command, Console.WriteLine. So now when we run the program, it'll accept an integer, or accept an input. So here we go. We'll say 5, and if you notice, it displays out there. So as you can see, num is set equal to readline, so the console accepts an input, it sets it here, and then we call that number right here. So console.readline, my number, as you saw here, 5. So you might be wondering, okay, cool, does that work the same for the rest of these? Exactly, it does. So here we go. Show you how to enter in some text. So num, yeah. Alright, so let's test this. Alright, exactly as before, we can enter in a integer, displays it. Now let's enter in some text. There we go. My text, CVB is really easy. Alright, so let's recap what we've learned. So what we've learned how to declare variables, set them equal to whatever we like. We've learned about the 4 types of variables: integer, double, char, and string. We've learned how to output text to the console, and we've also learned how to call our variables and print them to the console. And we've also learned how to input from the console into a variable and then display what we've just input. Alright, well, thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something from this, and stay tuned for the next installments of these tutorials. Alright, bye.